Hey, it's Josie with Affirmation Pod, your home for personal development, where I create actionable content that you can try before you hit the sack tonight. This episode is an affirmation. However, I'm going to have a few questions before and a couple questions after the affirmations, just as a reflection exercise for you. And the topic today is owning happiness. And I'm going to be adding a little bit in here on releasing victim mode. I want to say thank you to Angela from the Facebook group for requesting an episode on this topic. And if you would like to join the Facebook group, it's affirmationpod.com/Facebook. And I'm going to get started really soon, but I just want to say, if you're looking for a clear formula for happiness in this episode, you're not going to get it. Happiness is different for every person, and yet it's a very common goal for all of us, isn't it? So I invite you to declutter your mind now and give yourself the gift of this next 10 minutes to invest in your own happiness. It's a time for you and giving yourself something so special. Now let's take a few deep breaths. And now I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and I'm going to give you 30 seconds after each question, wherever you are, to answer the questions. I know you can do it. 30 seconds may feel like a long time, but I know you can do it. First question: what's your definition of happiness? Second question: what does owning your happiness mean to you? Third question: what does stepping out of victim mode mean to you? Now let's settle in for the affirmations. This is going to be a great day. Sure, circumstances impact how I feel about life, but I own my emotions. I own my happiness. I am clear on what makes me happy. I'm putting more of this in my life. I am clear on what makes me unhappy and having less of this in my life. I have channels for expressing gratitude, and I exercise these channels daily. I am clear on all my sources of fun. I am clear on all my sources of fulfillment. I am doing the things I need to do every day to create a happier life. But I know that doing things isn't going to make me happy. Happiness is a choice and something I need to navigate in each season of my life. I've learned from seasons of unhappiness and how I can manage things differently. Some of life is what happens to us, but most of life is how we deal with what happens to us. Happy things don't always happen. Happy feelings aren't always present. But inner happiness, it's not dependent on feelings or events. Getting stuck is something we all experience. Suffering is something we all experience. Being a victim in an experience is different from being a victim in a mindset. I can choose to see myself as a victim of life, or I can choose to see myself as an owner of happiness. I listen to how I define my life. how I share my stories, what grips my soul. And I check within myself where victimhood ends and happiness begins. I have the power to change my story, where I am the hero, where I rise above pain, where I do heal from suffering and start a new story, create a new path. I tune in to how I manage disappointments. I offer myself new perspectives. I choose lifelong happiness over lifelong suffering. I reflect on my thoughts, my emotions, my responses, and build a life of happiness instead of blame. I own my body. I own my behaviors. I own my choices. I own every decision. I own my happiness. And now, what's one shift you can make to own more of your happiness? And now, visualize something that represents this shift, something that you can call upon in your mind to visualize when you need it, when you find yourself in victim mode, when you feel like happiness just isn't in your grasp today or in that moment. What's that thing you're going to visualize, which represents the shift you're going to make to own more happiness? Well, my friend, that concludes the month on core beliefs. If you've been along for the ride for the series on core beliefs, you know that I've changed things up a little bit. I've tried new things, and hopefully it's beneficial for you. It's been really nice to stretch myself. It's been tough at times because it's not as comfortable as what I've always done. But then I know stretching myself, I'm going to learn. I'm going to grow. As I mentioned in the first episode of this series, it's hard for me to ask for help in my life. And so in that episode, which was episode 61, it was the first time I asked for help from the Affirmation Pod audience to subscribe, rate, or review the podcast. And I'm going to ask again, and I will be asking regularly. I think that's something that I want to do regularly because it's going to increase the exposure the podcast will have in iTunes, but it's also a shift for me to be able to step out of that core belief of I am on my own. Anyways, if you're curious about more of that story, head over to affirmationpod.com/beliefs to hear that episode. As you can tell, I do give thought and care into each episode that I give to you. And if it's been helpful to you, I do encourage you to give back by going into iTunes and subscribing, rating, or reviewing the podcast. And if you want, you can subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. And feel free to let me know as well that you've done that. This is Josie Ong with Affirmation Pod, your home for personal development. I'm sending you all my best on owning happiness, stepping out of victim mode. Thank you so much for clicking play and tuning in today. Bye for now.